The Mentalist isn't just about Patrick Jane outsmarting criminals. It's about the rare moments when someone is clever enough to actually challenge him. Most killers crack under his mind games, but a few are dangerously smart, almost slipping away. So I picked few, and today I'm diving into the smartest killers in the show. This episode begins like so many others, but quickly shifts into one of the darkest cases the team ever faces. The murder of Rich Garcia, a veteran, looks at first like an arson gone wrong, until the details reveal an incredibly sophisticated setup. The fire was started with rocket fuel, the garage was padlocked from the outside, and soon the team learns this isn't the first suspicious fire tied to Garcia's National Guard unit. The investigation circles around his business partners and an old land deal, but the picture only becomes more tangled when Chief Pillar's house is set ablaze and nearly kills him. At the heart of it all is Tommy Olds, the supposed slow handyman, who the town dismisses as harmless. He's the last person anyone would expect until Jane rips apart the illusion. What makes Tommy such a terrifyingly smart killer is the double life he created. By pretending to be mentally challenged, he built the perfect cover. People underestimated him, excused him, and never questioned what he might be capable of. In reality, he was deeply intelligent, capable of engineering precise and complex arson attacks, and patient enough to wait for the perfect moment to act. He used that disguise to move unnoticed, planning revenge for years against the men who betrayed Dave Martin and tried to profit off the aquifer. But here's the catch. Tommy wasn't just intelligent, he was consumed by vengeance. His need to punish turned his brilliance into something destructive. What ultimately exposed him wasn't a lack of skill, but Jane's ability to poke holes in his mask using something as simple as a Moby Dick reference. In that moment, Tommy couldn't resist proving his real intellect, and that pride, showing Jane who he truly was, is what made him fall. The Jared Renfrew case is one of those stories that starts with a deal Jane should never make, yet can't resist. Renfrew, already convicted for the murder of Undine, reaches out from prison claiming he has information about Red John. At first, Jane brushes it off until Renfrew drops a detail that no one outside the crime scene could possibly know. That Angela's toenails were painted in blood. That changes everything. Against Minnelli's orders, Jane digs into the case, uncovering how the victim's own mother, Vanna Clooney, was paid off to lie, and that Undine wasn't some stranger Jared stalked, but his lover and his half-sister. The real twist, though, comes when Mrs. Renfrew herself confesses. She killed Undine, staged the scene, and let her own son rot in prison, all because she couldn't bear their forbidden relationship. To pull it off, she staged the locked room mystery with a simple but brilliant trick, knocking the key onto a sheet of paper and dragging it back under the door, making it appear as though no one could have left the room except Jared. That level of cold, calculated manipulation, keeping a vial of blood as her insurance, is chilling. What makes Mrs. Renfrew one of the smartest killers in the series is how effectively she weaponized both family and appearances. She understood how to frame her son in a way that fit his troubled past, and she let society's assumptions about wealth, reputation, and Jared's flaws do the rest. By hiding the truth about Undine's parentage, she controlled the narrative completely. In a sense, her crime was less about passion and more about control. Controlling her son, controlling the scandal, and controlling how the world remembered her family. That's a different kind of intelligence than someone like Tommy Olds, because it's social and psychological, not technical. And what's even darker is that she succeeded. The Archie Bloom case is one of the most unusual and heartbreaking in The Mentalist. At first, it looks like a brutal murder. Archie, just 19, found handcuffed to his car and burned alive. The scene is horrific, and Jane quickly traces a clue: a broken high heel to a cabaret group of drag performers. Witnesses confirm Archie was alive moments before the fire, but whoever lit the match waited for them to leave. The investigation points in several directions: his cold, abusive father, who filmed himself handcuffing Archie to toughen him up, his homophobic co-worker, Rick, who bullied him daily, and Gabriel, who had dragged Archie into an abusive relationship. Each suspect had motive and opportunity, and as the team uncovers more like hidden photos, disturbing computer files, even falsified testimony, the web of cruelty surrounding Archie becomes clear. But the biggest twist comes when Jane realizes Archie wasn't murdered at all. He staged his own death with the help of the cabaret performers, who swapped in another body, falsified dental records, and gave Archie the chance to escape as his new persona, Fifi Nix. To me, this case flips the idea of the smartest killer on its head. Archie isn't a killer in the traditional sense, but he's the victim who turned his own tragedy into an escape plan. But the intelligence behind it is staggering. Think about it. A 19-year-old beaten down by bullying, parental abuse, and toxic relationships still found the clarity to design a staged death that fooled even the CBI. He chose a method like fire that destroyed nearly all evidence, relied on allies who could manipulate both funeral homes and dental records, and created a believable narrative around his suffering. In that sense, Archie is both a victim and a mastermind. His crime wasn't really about vengeance or anything, it was survival. What really sticks with me is the psychology behind it. Archie used the world's cruelty against itself. He knew his father's abuse, Rick's bullying, and Gabriel's addiction would point suspicion everywhere but himself. By leaving those breadcrumbs, he ensured that justice in some form would still reach his abusers while he disappeared into a new life. It's tragic, it's brilliant, and it makes Archie Bloom one of the most unique and quietly intelligent figures in the entire show. This episode throws Jane into one of the most personal vendettas he's ever faced. It starts with a bomb threat, and the explosion leaves Jane temporarily blind. The supposed victim is James Medina, a stockbroker, but it quickly becomes clear the real target is Jane. The killer wants him to watch, to suffer, to feel powerless. As the team digs, the trail leads back years earlier to one of Jane's psychic readings. Jill Lamont had once asked him about her husband's fidelity. Jane's careless revelation had shattered her marriage, sent Paul Krager into a spiral, cost him his career under Medina, and destroyed the perfect life of their son, Dan. That boy grew up furious, obsessed with revenge, and reemerges as Grace Van Pelt's new boyfriend, using her to get close to Jane. The reveal hits hard when they realize Dan Hollenbeck is Krager's son, and the entire plot, from the parking lot bomb to Rigsby's brutal beating, is part of his revenge fantasy. What makes Dan such a frighteningly smart antagonist is how personal he makes his attack. Unlike most killers who try to cover their tracks, Dan wants Jane to know exactly why he's doing this. He infiltrates the team through Van Pelt, stages elaborate bombs, and manipulates every detail to mirror Jane's own history of destruction. In his mind, Jane stole his family, so he sets out to take Jane out. It's twisted logic, but intelligent in its planning. And he nearly succeeds because Jane was like blind and vulnerable, and was forced to rely on instincts alone to survive. But Dan's brilliance is also his weakness. He underestimates Lisbon's timing, overplays his hand with Van Pelt, and can't resist confronting Jane face to face instead of escaping. That need for recognition and the demand that Jane acknowledges his suffering becomes the flaw that costs him everything. The Vogelsong Mansion case is one of those episodes that feels gothic from the start, and I love it. An eerie old estate, an heiress found as ashes by the fireplace. Partridge, of course, leans toward the supernatural, but Jane quickly dismantles that idea. He spots missing glassware, residue, and clues that point to murder, disguised as accident. The suspects line up neatly. Curtis, the resentful nephew who fought Elise in court, Lance Reinhardt, her shady doctor with a history of malpractice, and Casey, her young sailing companion who inherited a $250,000 boat. For a while, it looks like Curtis has the most to gain because he stood to win a lawsuit against his aunt and get control of the Vogelson Trust. But Jane's instincts lead him back to Casey, and through her to the real mastermind hiding below deck, Elise Vogelsong herself. The woman everyone assumed was dead had faked her own demise, murdered her friend Lissy, and planned to frame Curtis while keeping control of her fortune. What makes Elise such a fascinatingly smart killer is her combination of arrogance and cunning. She used wealth and status as both a shield and a weapon. By staging her own death, she not only threw investigators off, but also manipulated her enemies into turning against each other. The method of burning a body to ash, planting evidence like the medal, and silencing anyone who got in her way shows just how far she was willing to go. But Jane saw through her because, as clever as she was, Elise couldn't resist control. She needed to dictate every detail of her legacy, to decide who deserved what, and that obsessive need to dominate revealed her hand. The Bright Arch case is one of the creepiest in the series. It happens on an isolated wilderness camp, strict discipline, Mastez therapy, and a murdered teenager dumped in the woods. Justin Prentice, only a kid, ends up dead after trying to protect a girl named Cassie from the camp's twisted principal, Asher McLean. At first, suspicion falls on McLean himself, who was secretly abusing Cassie, and the Z Crew, a masked group of students terrorizing locals under the myth of Zachariah, a ghostly woodsman. Jane peels back the layers with his usual trickery, storytelling, and pure observation. His breakthrough comes during the sacred fire ceremony, where he spins the Zachariah tale into a performance, daring the kids to call the ghost. When Elliot, the camp's longest-standing student, reacts differently, Jane knows he's the one. Terrified by Jane's staged ghost hand reaching from the ground, Elliot confesses he killed Justin with a rock when Justin threatened to expose McLean's abuse. Elliot's intelligence lies in how he manipulated both peers and authority. By keeping the Zachariah legend alive, he created fear that silenced the other kids. He used the myth to enforce control, making himself both enforcer and protector. He also exploited McLean's secret, leveraging it as quiet blackmail that gave him even more power. For a teenager, that's disturbingly calculating. His downfall, though, is classic. Overconfidence. He thought he could keep the story straight forever, but Jane noticed the details like the teacup with Z's, his eagerness to spread the Zachariah tale, and his discomfort when Jane embellished the legend. What makes Elliot stand out among the Mentalist killers is that he wasn't just violent, he was cunning. He weaponized stories and fear, turning a campfire myth into a cover for murder. And while he was just a kid, that level of manipulation shows a chilling kind of intelligence. That's gonna be it for this video. There are many other smart criminals in this series, and I might even make part 2 in the future. I didn't mention the obvious ones like Red John or James Panzer, which I already covered in separate videos. I want to say huge thank you to the Reddit user Walter Mashburn 522 who reached out to me with a list of criminals that inspired this video. Anyways, that's it. I'll catch you guys up in the next one.